Okay, it's 6:35, so I would like to thank everyone for joining us this evening. This is our one of two general meetings that we have as it's part of our bylaws and also criteria. One of the criteria for the registered community organization, which we are. So the agenda will have public safety updates, stormwater program updates, updates from the state. City Council will be meeting one of the new members of the neighborhood constituent services through the mayor's office. And then we will also share updates from the Southside Community Council. So I know that I saw Public Safety Director Lee Schmidt. He had invited, and we were pleased to have the invitation to Police Chief Scott Schubert, Assistant Chief of Operations Linda Barone, and Commander John Fisher of Zone 3. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn the agenda over to them. We did ask if there were any questions that you had at that particular time when you were reading the email, if you would share them with us, and we would share them with those in public safety so that they could see the questions and then better be able to craft their answers. So I'm not sure if I should read them or if you would like to just respond before others may want to ask other questions.
Questions in front of me. If you want me to respond to them, I will, or perhaps if Director Schmidt wants to. Either way, it makes no difference to me.
So one, I think a large one was just now that we're moving into spring and summer, what are the administration's plans to ensure that East Carson Street and the residential areas are safe for both residents and visitors this spring, summer, and fall?
Well, why don't we do this? That's on your list here. That is second. So why don't I just go down the list the way I have?
Okay.
And as I had mentioned, we'll first talk about the robbery homicide on Freiburg Street. Overall, and I mentioned this last week on the Zone 3 public safety meeting. Zone 3 has had 5 homicides overall year to date and 6 aggravated assault shootings. But we'll talk about the shooting on Freiburg Street. It was a robbery that occurred. The victim was shot through the course of a robbery. My understanding is that he was one of the entertainers there. They have suspects identified. I don't believe they've arrested them yet, but they know who they are and they're actively looking for them. With regards to the skate shop and what's going on there, we're going to have to get the PL&E involved in that, or the health department, fire department, et cetera, to make sure that they have proper permits, which I'm sure they don't, that they're in compliance with occupancy permits, et cetera. Those are non-police issues. We can certainly request their help, but again, those are non-police issues. The issue that we have concerning that is the homicide, and that is an open investigation with a suspect identified. Does anybody have any questions regarding that question?
My only question about that is, when's your patrol or somebody on duty sees something like that happening, is there somebody at the PLI or at the city level that the police can contact to move it out of the police situation? You know, it's not in your purview. So who do you contact to get it into somebody else's purview and action to be started to be taken? Because, you know, like when you see a party like that happening, I get it. There's nothing there that's of a matter of law, but, you know, can you call the fire department and have the fire marshal shut down the building and revoke the occupancy? Can you have PLI come out? Is there a contact person that can shut it down and revoke their occupancy? How has that worked? And is there a methodology there that can be followed?
There is, I can make contacts to any of those entities and request that. I would prefer that we do it in a where they would all show up at one time, police, or I'm sorry, fire, permits and licensing. And I also reached out to and found very helpful to be the Allegheny County Health Department. Strangely enough, the Allegheny County Health Department has more teeth than any of the other entities for closing places down. I've used them in the past, and they have authority to do that. So we can certainly contact them on this. This was the first time this came across my radar, but I think what really enhanced it was the homicide, because we see these places popping up in the south side, up in the Allentown, Mount Oliver area, and frankly across the city. So yes, we have entities involved that can address that. The public safety director, the Chief Schubert, Chief Barone, myself discussed this earlier today, and trying to come up with a strategy, which I imagine I'll probably spearhead. So I hope, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I would just like to see that, in the coming months, when it happens again. I don't hope nobody shot, but as another one of these pop-up drinking establishments happens, that there's a system in place that, it's shut down before something happens. I guess that's what we as residents would like to see happen.
I'll share this with you as well. Something else that I found helpful. I've contacted property owners in the past, landlords who are renting to these groups, and made them aware of the both the legal and civil liabilities that can follow for incidents that happen there. And we talked about that this morning as well, perhaps getting the law department on board, sending out a formalized letter, because me calling somebody and just saying that is one thing, and telling him, property interest, I'm placing you on official notice. Well, that's verbally. We need something, a letterhead that goes out that places them on official notice. But to date, most of them, except for one, have complied with my request and shut the place down. So you collectively, you folks as a group collectively could do the same thing and send out an official letterhead saying, this is who we are, this is what's going on at your property, and be advised, that there could be legal ramifications. We're requesting A, B, C, and D, whatever you may be on. That's powerful. That's really putting them on notice, aside from any criminal actions or civil actions. So that's just simply an eye out to you folks.
And correct me if I'm wrong in what it is that I'm saying. When something is happening, what I think is, when the police are called, they're called oftentimes because of noise, and or if there's some sort of activity that seems to be unusual in the neighborhood. That skate shop may not have drew the attention of the residents who live there, or it may have, and that's the time either to get in touch, if it's not ongoing at that particular time, to contact the Southside Community Council or Bruce Krause's office. If there's noise, then you call the police, because the PLI and others are not working 24/7, but they can follow up, and that oftentimes has happened, but it can be shut down or dealt with through the police by residents making contact and saying, I'm seeing unusual activity here. Normally it doesn't happen. It's quiet. In the case of the skate shop, it doesn't operate in the evenings. I know that there have been one or two places on East Carson Street that have been problematic and brought to our attention in a variety of ways, either through trash being left in the alley somewhere when it should have been picked up, or a resident saying, I'm seeing people outside and it looks like they're charging, and it's a yoga shop. So it's not something where there would be this huge party. So and I know of one where Commander Fisher did talk with the property owner, and it was because others in the community had seen on social media that there were plans for this big party, and he was able to make contact and let him know that if that there's liability there if someone would be injured, because certainly the place did not have occupancy for the number of people that would have been in there.
Right.
So I don't know if I said anything that was incorrect, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, keep in mind your strength in numbers. If you're notifying these landlords, if your group is notifying them, if I'm calling them, if they're getting notification from the city law department, the person with half a brain should be able to look at that and say, hey, I have to address this or I'm going to end up in trouble. That's one of the first steps that we need to take. One individual that we're dealing with, I placed him on notice. He's the property owner, landlord. It's up along Brownsville Road. It's not affecting you folks, but he's intentionally naive. He's making a buck. He doesn't live in the city of Pittsburgh. He lives in Murraysville, and I said, eventually we've had a homicide there. Eventually this is going to splash back on you as well. Just letting you know it's coming. And so I'm telling you folks the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like me to go on to Carson Street?
Yes, and I see that it's 10 to 7. I know that Director Schmidt needs to go to another meeting, so it might be, as Jackie had suggested, that we have him introduce himself to this group, and then the two of you can speak to East Carson, and then he can hand it over to you at 7.
That's fine. I'll stand by.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me join. My name is Lee Schmidt. I'm the new Director of Public Safety. I have been the Assistant Director of Operations and Administration for the past 2 years. And for 3 years prior to that, I was over in police as their business administrator. And I spent 20 plus years out in the suburbs as a paramedic prior to coming to the city. I'm a lover of the city. I enjoy pretty much all the neighborhoods, and even South Side. I go down there, not too much on the Friday and Saturday nights, but other nights I do. So and we have gone down for operational reasons as well as see what's going on. I was involved last year with Director Hisrich and Commander Fisher, so we're looking forward to trying to work on solutions for y'all. As the commander said, we have been trying. One thing we're looking at, I don't know if you all are aware, but we do have our disruptive properties administrator back. So there is a person to kind of track some of that. So like for the house parties, I know you guys mentioned those. We can start tracking those addresses a little bit. For these pop-up bars or speakeasies that are BYOB or however they're, skirting around the liquor control enforcement rules. We are working with PLI and our law department, as well as the health department and LCE and our fire marshal, which we really only have 2. So as Commander Fisher said, PLI, fire marshal, though they're not really around 24/7. They are on call 24/7 if need be. But what we're looking to do is more of a coordinated effort. So as these properties are reported, police respond. Between the law department and PLI, they can send the property owner notice of violations, especially about occupancy, because when it comes to occupancy, it's not just about numbers, it's also about the use. So like the skate store obviously has, permission or should have permission for an occupancy of a retail outlet. That's very different than a event space or a gathering space. Requires different fire code, different inspections. So those are the things that we're kind of looking for. So if there is anything that you all as residents find out, if you send those over to Commander and myself and others, it's helpful. If we do know about them ahead of time, then we can maybe get a task force together similar to what we do for St. Patrick's Day, get that together and have them respond together. We're also working with parking authority again on some of those things. I know last year we had to provide some police protection for parking authority staff because they were getting harassed a bit, and things thrown at them by folks that were down there. So again, I do look forward to, I apologize that I can't stay on longer tonight, but I do look forward to continuing to work and see what we can do together to improve the situation down in the south side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as we think about East Carson Street and the upcoming months, how are you all in public safety thinking about how to best manage the area?
Well, this morning, the director, the chiefs, and myself, and you saw what we did down there last year, the lane closure and forcing traffic one way outbound. I believe that it worked. I believe that it addressed the problem as it was last year. It was not very popular, but I believe it worked. That is not on the radar this year yet. And we talked about this morning. My position as the commander there is initially to monitor this and to be more responsive than reactive. We have to take a wait and see approach and see how this starts to play out. Will we get the same crowds as last year, the same behavior? We don't know. There's nobody that can predict that. However, then I'm going to become more reactive and take a significantly more assertive approach with the permission of the director and the chief. And I think that it will be noticeable because my position down there is safety first for all that are involved. So we're taking a wait and see approach, not a hands off, but a wait and see. I have to tell you that compared to this time of last year, zone 3, I'm 15 officers short. That's through resignations and retirements. And that's a phenomenon that's going across the city. So we're not unique here. But when I know 15 officers short, last year, I had 15 officers dedicated to the south side, Saturday and Sunday, and additional officers if needed. So I no longer have that. So I'm facing a manpower issue. But we are going to monitor, keep a very close eye on it. If we get one bad weekend down there, is that an indicator that all weekends are going to be like that? I don't know. But if we start to get 2 bad weekends, 3 bad weekends, then the changes that we probably did last year, it might be an inconvenience to some. But again, my position first and foremost is public safety and community tranquility. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I'll be happy to take questions if you have any.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to ask about the substation and how that might change the police.
I was going to ask that.
We have
Will we be using it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or is it all week, or is it? Yeah, please explain more. Thanks.
We have a walkthrough planned on that. I know they're in there actively working. We have to overcome some issues. I wanted to utilize that on weekends, particularly the cell block area there for intoxicated people. But we've got some obstacles we have to overcome there with our accreditation in our police department. The cells that are in there are old and obsolete. They may need to be updated. So we're trying to work that out. But make no mistake about it, my intent in getting that reopened for that reason, to have a holding area where we can take intoxicated people who can't care for themselves and hold them in a safe and secure area for 4 to 6 hours until they're sobered up, issue them a citation and send them on their way, as opposed to issuing them a citation on the street and they're intoxicated and they're still on the street. We care for people like that. I've said this last year is, we issue somebody a citation for public intoxication, we release them and they walk out into Carson Street and get hit by a car. They're going to turn around and hold us liable saying, well, the police had me in custody. Why didn't they take care of me? So that was my goal with reopening that zone, the old number station. And I know there were people who wanted to go beyond that for other reasons, but that's for another time. So we're hoping to get over those little obstacles we had. And I can't force the work to be completed in any quicker of a fashion than what it is, but that would be my goal and objective with that.
And just to confirm, how many cells are there? What's the capacity? Well, I've never
Last
been there, thankfully.
Last we were in there, I believe there's 10 cells. And those would be for males. Now we also have to look at females too. They had an area in there from years ago that we referred to as a bullpen for females, and it was just one large cell. But other things we have to going in there, males and females have to be kept separate. There have to be cameras in there. They got to be closely monitored, which we had a plan for all that. So hopefully I can get it off the ground. Me and the others that are the chiefs and the director were all pulling in the same direction.
Thank you.
So does anyone, keeping in mind, Director Schmidt has 4 minutes, but Commander Fisher can stay on for a little more time. Anyone else have questions regarding East Carson Street for them?
Hey, this is Doug Artsy. I have one quick question. I've noticed an increase in train jumpers in East Carson. They kind of have, we've also found needles in some of the parks, and actually a bag of needles at the Southside Park while I was doing a hike with my family. Is there any plan in place or any mitigation items that can be done to handle this situation?
That's another unique problem. And I know I was just introduced to that last year as I came to this zone about 15 months ago. You know, obviously, if you see these people and you believe that they're utilizing them to use drugs, you should immediately call 911. If you see needles, paraphernalia on the ground, call 911. We'll have somebody come down and either collect it, or we'll get Public Works to come down and do the same. I would caution you as to handling it. I mean, if you would be up to that's you're doing so at your own risk. I would certainly wear gloves, etc. And if you're going to clean that up, but yeah, we're aware of that. It happens every year. Again, Pittsburgh is not unique to that either. These people, these rail riders come, from my understanding is they come south because the weather's going to get warm. They're designated spots that they like to go to. We dealt with the issues with them last year along Carson Street. There were 2 or 3 of them that were really a nuisance, and we were successful in getting them moved on and out of the business area there. And they didn't come back, but I see them down there as well as you, walking up and down Carson Street in the park. They live at the homeless camps as well. And we are kind of limited to what we can do with them unless they're breaking the law. They have a right to be on the street as much as anybody else, regardless of how they look, or, you know, so that's a difficult situation.
If I could just expand on that a little bit too, just so you all are aware, our Office of Community Health and Safety, in conjunction with Allegheny Health Network, are currently looking for space in the South Side to open one of their centers, the AHN centers, similar to what we have on Smithfield Street downtown, that would provide services to homeless individuals, including, you know, drug rehab and some other things. And they'll be down there. So there will be dedicated staff down there interacting with those folks, kind of getting to know them, give them some case management and other services to hopefully help alleviate some of that.
May I say something?
Thank you.
Lee Schmidt, may I?
Go ahead, Deb.
Some of these homeless or transit or, you know, crusties or train kids have dogs. So when you're talking about helping them with sort of a place to go, how do you help those with the dogs? And then sometimes they give up and let their dogs go.
I've never seen that happen. Director, if you want to go.
You've never seen what happen?
So we do have, we have some homeless folks with dogs. to the point that last year we had somebody take a dog from a homeless resident who we were about to place in a shelter, and then he refused to go into a shelter until we found his dog, which we were able to do, and we did get him into placement. So it depends on what, there are placements for them with animals, but we also do have our animal care and control folks make sure the dogs are well taken care of, which most of the time they are. If they let them go, then obviously then we can take them as a loose dog, but we also don't want to take someone's dog because that can impact them even more negatively and put them into a spiral, depending on, that dog might be their only companion of any sort. So that can create some concern by just taking the dog. So we do try to work with them to get placement that permits an animal to go with them.
And then we did have a question that had come in, and I didn't have the opportunity to share. It's can the city clean up the tent encampment along the Three Rivers Heritage Trail, roughly around 10th Street along the railroad tracks? There are several tents and a great deal of trash, which is pretty unsightly. Is it possible to have garbage cans put there and have them encouraged to use them and have the city remove the trash weekly if they're not going to disperse the people?
I don't have the answer for that. I think that might have to come from the director or from DPW, but I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can talk to our OCHS folks on that one as well. I know they do. Again, right now AHN only has one satellite station, but by the end of, hopefully by summer, they'll have one in just about every zone, but zone 3 is on the list. So that is part of what they do, is go to the camps and assist them with, keeping them clean and working with us as far as, like you said, to put trash cans up, even as far as putting porta johns in, some other things to keep it more sanitary and clean. So,
Just to let you all know, our tact for the last few years has been, as long as they're not in park property, parks are not allowed. We're not allowing, or haven't been allowing them to camp in parks. So private property, railroads has been acceptable, not acceptable, but it's where they've ended up. But every spring we do a cleanup along the trail, and we do remove all the mostly abandoned at that time encampments. So if anybody's available on April 23rd, please join us.
I have a question. I've asked at a couple different places. I know that there's opportunities, at Mercy, there's the bridge outreach. There are all kinds of folks who are doing outreach with the unhoused populations. But has anybody at the city started to look at, something like the Colorado Collaborative, where you find a piece of land that is accessible and you put up tenting, and then services are provided there? Because on 15th Street where we live, I've had a lot of conversations with the transient population, the folks that are there because of mental health issues. I pretty much talk to as many people who are walking up my street to the encampment. A lot of them are saying that they're waiting to get housing. They don't want to live up there. They're waiting to get housing, and they're on lists. They're calling Allegheny Links every month. And there are others who don't want to part from their dogs. I would say of the 30 or 40 that I've talked to in the last year, 50% of them have dogs. And without coming up with some kind of way for these folks to make sure their dogs are okay while they're receiving treatment, like Colorado Collaborative has done, this is a big picture strategy resolution to a problem that we're going to have every year. They'll be back this year. The encampments up above 15th Street have been there the last 3 years. They've grown, but they've been there the last 3 years. And I've been trying to find somebody at the county and the city level who'd be willing to investigate that as a possibility in the south side, because we do have lots that are not surrounded by residential areas, that maybe we could look at creating something temporary.
Thank you, Michelle.
And that may be something to in discussion with Laura Dragowski. And I know that you may have spent time talking with her about that, but that's probably where the entree point is.
There was no interest, follow-up or interest. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I will tell the group that the new shelter that's opening on 2nd Avenue, if you've read the paper, if you've seen any reports on it in the last 2 years, is a full public, privately funded wraparound services shelter. That shelter is providing drop-in services for people during the day, as well as single room occupancy, as we see at some of the YMCAs and across the city. And if people have animals and pets, dogs, they are accepting folks with their pets. So unfortunately, I can't make the meeting tomorrow with the community outreach team, but it may be something if folks on this call want to ask about and get more information about. Allegheny Health Network is highly involved in that, as well as the City of Pittsburgh, Action Housing, and others within our area.
Thank you, Jackie.
No problem. I was on the design team. That's why I was able to speak a little bit about it.
All right. We have an
So
insider.
don't quote me if I'm wrong on any of that.
We have an insider. So to keep the meeting moving, a few other questions that we did have for the commander and others in public safety were around parking violations, and they're of huge concern for residents. And we've talked about this in a number of different meetings, parking in front of fire hydrants, crosswalks, and no parking areas. At the Zone 3 public safety meeting last week, we heard about problem parking on South 21st Street near the brew house. As I was coming back from City Theater on 2 Fridays ago, I think it was, I noticed that in the 1400 block of Bingham, on the side where Thick Bikes building is, it was, it's no parking signs, but it was filled with cars were parking there. As a matter of fact, we had to wait while a car tried to get into a space. And it's very, very tight. If there was a need for, in that particular instance, if there was a need for emergency vehicles to pass, they wouldn't be able to do so. That is not an area that has residential permit parking. So it's probably being overlooked because of everything else that's going on. And I guess a question is, would there be police available? Commander, you had mentioned the motorcycle police. Is it possible to have them begin ticketing those cars on Bingham that should not be there? One problem is that when others may be realize that they can't park there and they won't park there. Somebody's always going to be parking there. So that's not a long-term solution. And that's something that we may have to think about.
Yeah, as we had mentioned last, or as I had mentioned last, we focus primarily on the south side with the parking issues on the weekends. That seems to be more prevalent. I request motorcycles to come in. Over the summer, we were getting anywhere between 4 and 8 motorcycles that would just tag and tow down there all night, tagging and towing vehicles. We sign the areas, ignore them. For the obvious reasons, they're drinking, or they don't live in the neighborhood, but we do tag and we do tow. Any violations that you see, like I know here on your questions, a vehicle parked in the middle of 21st Street. Well, come on now, we're gonna tow that car immediately. So all that's gonna do is take a call to 911 saying the car is left abandoned in the middle of the street. Don't park in the middle of the street. If you left your car in the middle of the street, it's abandoned. We're gonna take it. this is an age-old problem on the south side, and it's the perfect storm for you folks. You know, you have residential housing, student housing, and then you have the businesses that are selling alcohol, providing entertainment. Good mix. It's never a compatible mix. So we try to manage it the best that we can. We rely on you folks. If there is a urgent issue, to call 911. We'll get a car there as quickly as we can. And again, I will be requesting the motorcycles to come down there, particularly on the weekends. And I'll give you one point. You know, we have the safety zone on Carson Street, which is really tough to manage because we have, let's say 6 motorcycles. They're at one end tagging and towing, and they move down Carson Street and continue to tag and tow. And the further they get away from the area they just finished, it backfills.
Right.
So it's very difficult.
Yeah. And I think something that we often hear from residents who will come and speak to us via email or in person, that they did not want to call 911 because they didn't feel that it was that much of an emergency. But the fact that they're telling us on a Sunday or a Monday, I know I at least remind them that it is something that they really need to contact 911 about. Otherwise, they're going to continue to complain and say nothing is happening. We also understand, and I think the commander has shared, that the police may not show up immediately because they're dealing with other issues. And as he mentioned earlier, they're down quite a few police officers, but hopefully it will be addressed, but in the order of importance. If there's something going on East Carson Street, they may not be able to come to South 21st, but it doesn't mean that you should not call.
You're correct. We will get to the call, depending on call volume and how busy it is on any given night. We will get to the call eventually, keeping in mind that, you know, Zone 3 consists of 16 neighborhoods, not just the south side. So, but, you know, it shouldn't take that long. There's cars that are always actively on the south side. So I strongly encourage anybody to call 911. It's free, doesn't cost you nothing, and we will send a car.
And that also holds true for student parties, that it's problematic when you hear the following day, there was a party, I suffered through the noise and throughout the entire day, but they didn't feel comfortable calling 911, either because they didn't want to take the police officer from something else he or she was doing. But in some cases, they didn't want retaliation from those whose party it was. But again, we're asking that 911 be called. And in the past, and hopefully it'll continue, when the police were called, they would ask if they were university students or not. And if they are university students, that Tim Lewis from Duquesne University is contacted, and then he takes it the next steps. When the information is shared with me, whether they're university students or young professionals, if you want to call them that, then we do contact the property owner. We will let them know what the problem was and how it impacted the quality of life of the residents. It's also very important to let those of us in the council know, because as I think it was Director Schmidt mentioned, the disruptive property division, I don't know if you would call it a division, but it's becoming, it was not around over the last couple of years, and it is coming back. If a property is considered disruptive after so many police calls, there are repercussions for the property owner. And so I think those, because the department is reestablishing itself, they're probably working on the process what will happen. But it is something that we haven't had in the past that we hope will make a difference to the property owners so that they're more responsible for their properties than they may have been. But again, it's important for us as residents, because we are here to make it known if they are, once again, creating a problem with they're impacting our quality of life.
I would also like to urge people to become familiar with one of their block watches. We have 7 block watches. Each block watch has 2 leads. Letting them know about a problem can also be very effective. It's good sometimes to have someone representing 90 people speak to Barbara or speak to the students and such. And Tim Lewis is very good at reprimanding students who cause difficulties. In fact, recently, a student came by and dropped letters of apology to everybody on the block. So that is a very effective way of working and nipping problems in the bud.
Barb, you know, I can't find the raise hand button. I have a really quick question, if I may.
Okay, sure.
That year, the year to date, the 5 homicides year to date, is that year to calendar year?
That's from the first of the year until today.
Yeah, calendar year. Okay. And then just if I can tag on one other super quick thing. I don't know if everyone got to see the mayor speak in Homewood and really speaking to the faith-based community about taking accountability for what he was calling the street corners, and you know, if having kids not be vulnerable to people who might not have good intentions in terms of what they would have them you know, take part in. And I wanted to make sure I was correct that the shooters in Southside, from what I can tell, don't seem to be of the community. So some of the community-based violence prevention, particularly the trauma-informed stuff that we'll hear about from Ceasefire at Liz's next meeting. Am I correct that we can't wrap our arms around that in Southside with the people who have been shooting here because they seem to reside elsewhere?
Yeah, and you bring up an excellent point. Yes. Thinking back to last year, I can't remember every one, but the majority, if not all the shootings we had down there, be they a homicide or an aggravated shooting, were from outsiders.
Yeah, okay, thank you. That's something to think about.
Barbara, may I chime in, please?
Yes, yes.
Yes, thank you. 2 issues, and I think it could solve many of our problems here in the South Side. And one is the enforcement of permit parking. For example, folks, I right now have a loaner from a car dealership without a permit, obviously. It took 32 days, 32 evenings for me to get my first ticket. That's just unbelievable when you think of it. If we enforce permit parking, a lot of these problems are going to be solved. We have to address permit parking. Number 2, if I may, I understand the challenges of intoxicated individuals in the South Side. And I realize that some folks will come to the South Side intoxicated. But once they're intoxicated, we've already lost half the battle. These bars are over-serving. If you just take an individual, if you serve an individual 2-3 drinks an hour, that person is intoxicated. So with all due respect, and there's so many important issues, and I thank everyone for being so involved, but I think we need to enforce permit parking. Riccardi only got a ticket after 32 days, and I've been parking on that street. And number 2, these bars are over-serving. We've heard the challenges from the police. Once a person is intoxicated, it becomes a problem. Do you cite them? Do you release them? Do you take them off the street? Once they're in the cells, we are responsible, the taxpayer, for their safety. Please, we have to address over-serving in our bars, and we have to address permit parking. And once again, thank you very much, Dr. Rudiak, for that time.
And I can respond to the permit parking. At our Southwatch meetings, we repeatedly speak to Gwen Bolden about the need for consistent permit parking. There have been challenges around hiring enforcement officers, and hopefully that will become less of a problem. but we do get documentation. We do get data regarding the number of licenses that are viewed and the number of tickets, and we do talk about that at our meetings. So I think everyone who is a resident on South Side and has a permit will agree with you, Judge Riccardi.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I'm not sure if we need to go into this now, because we do have a lot of other things, but there is, I did bring up and share with the commander and others that there is a social host and underage drinking ordinance that I'm not a betting woman, but I'd bet $100 that no one has ever been cited because of this this ordinance. And what it is a host, which is defined as a person who owns, leases, or is in possession and control of the residential property where a gathering takes place, may not knowingly or with constructive knowledge conduct or accommodate a gathering, including underage drinking. Any host who violates the ordinance shall be subject to a fine of up to $100, $500, or in default thereof, imprisonment not exceeding 72 hours. And I know that Commander Fisher had said that they don't, they don't, when they're shutting down a party or speaking to those that are having a party, they're not looking at their driver's license. They're not going inside. They can't go inside. They don't address the underage drinking that is no doubt going on. So I'm not sure that it's a question for law enforcement, but it may need to go back to city council on what was the expectation and for this ordinance, and how was it expected that it would be enforced.
I'll just weigh in on that real quickly. Ordinances are great. Sometimes they're drafted to fix for a problem and it doesn't work. The more proper charge for that would be, if we could prove it, would be corrupting minors. The defense to that would be, if you're hosting a party and there are minors in there, your defense to that could be, I didn't know they were minors, or I didn't see them drinking. So there's a lot there to think about from a legal perspective. We have to walk into a house where there's a party. We can be invited in, or if there's some sort of an emergency in there, we can go in. But people have, whether they own a home or rent a home, they have an expectation of privacy in that property. And I'm not saying that excuses disruptive behavior. I'm not telling you not to call the police if there's parties going on, call, but just so you know, legalities that are associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
Barb, could we
Yes.
do, for instance, the party on 14th Street on St. Patrick's Day that had over 150 people in it? Couldn't we do something like those great yellow sticky notes with that ordinance on it? Because the police were called, they did break up the meeting. We know that there was money being charged. We know there were underage drinkers because they were jumping over the back of the fence. But I also, as block watch for that area, I would go back to that house and stick that information only placard on their door.
Why don't you, I mean, you can certainly do that. Again, why don't you collectively, one spokesperson draft a letter outlining this and what you saw in one to the property owner, one to the tenant.
Yeah, we've done that. What we also need to do is copy the legal department, P&L. We need to copy everybody if we're, because they don't care. This has been a problem property for 5 years. The landlord does not care. But that, I was just bringing that up as the sticky, because those stickies that you developed, or that Southside Community Council developed regarding trash, have been very helpful.
Yeah, I think that there has to be the consequence. It might be knowing that there is an ordinance. Then the question is, you often need someone to get caught into that with violating that ordinance. Tim has said that, let's say in August, or even the in the springtime, once a number of houses have been visited by the police, oftentimes parties do go down because through word of mouth, they find out that residents are calling 911, someone is calling 911 and the police are responding, and it then brings things up. So there has to be, in my estimation, some sort of follow up and consequence. And we do contact the property owners. It's very possible now with the disruptive property coming into effect, there might be more teeth with the property owner than there has been in the past. And that's probably going to be a more effective way to handle the issue than with this host ordinance. But it's something that we should be thinking about, because I would bet many people on the call here didn't even know that there was a host and underage drinking ordinance, even though they may have had parties on their block by students or others.
And if I can chime in here, one thing that really helps out a lot, there's always a hesitancy to call 911 in these situations. We really need residents calling 911 when this happens, but following up with our office afterwards and telling us of an incident that happened so that I can follow up with the commander and try to find the incident report number, make sure that property was tagged as a nuisance property, and the more times that box is checked, the more beneficial that is when we do get the nuisance property department up and running. So please let us know when that happens so that we can create a log of it. And having that data is so beneficial for us.
So are there any more questions for our public safety and law enforcement?
Barb, just one clarification, that nuisance property is residential or commercial, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it seems like regarding the commercial nuisance properties, there's these like accusations that everybody sort of knows these things, but they don't know them with enough knowledge that you could call 911. Like that's a little tricky. Like it seems like everyone knows this is a problem. Everyone knows this other place is a problem, but not in a way that you could like say something to 911.
I think it's, to me, and certainly Commander Fisher and others can respond, there has to be, as with 911, there has to be an incident of some sort. So you just can't say, I think such and such is happening. You would be contacting 911 and saying, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and I can hear the noise through my wall. Or there's a fight outside the house next door to me and there's a party inside. I
mean the bars that I keep hearing, person after person after person keeps claiming that these certain bars are willfully attracting people who shoot each other and they are nuisance properties. But like, I can't think of, when I go by, it looks like the same nice kids that I would see anywhere. So I don't understand how you, like, everyone seems to know this thing that I wouldn't possibly know how to call 911 and say something.
But you can't call 911 on
no, that's what I'm saying.
An example like that. There has to be, and Commander Fisher, you may want to chime in here.
What I mean to ask differently is, how do you build that tally list of nuisance property concerns for a nuisance property, commercial property, if everyone seems to know a thing but the thing isn't the kind of thing you could call 911 about?
But they may, go ahead, Commander.
That's what gets the ball rolling. It calls. Those calls are logged on computer age dispatch. They're there. We can always follow back on them and say, hey, at Joe's bar, we've had this many calls there on these dates for this type of activity, fighting, underage drinking, public intox. And that in essence should send up a red flag to this disruptive properties.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I'm sorry if I'm not wording this well, so if it's getting annoying, but what I'm saying is, I guess no one calls because everyone seems to know there's these 3 bars that are the problem, but I wouldn't possibly know what to call about because when I go by, they look fine.
But then you can't, then you can't call.
And
You have to have.
No.
It's the people near Ember on 13th Street or wherever that hear the noise at 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't have to try and anticipate that. It's the people near Cosmos at 4 o'clock in the morning. So those are the people who call when they actually see something going on. To hear that it's a bad place and to call, I hear this is a bad place, is not what you should do. That's, I think, what the distinction.
No. So what I'm saying is those people must not be calling because the log hasn't been mounting.
And that may be, that very well may be the case. So, but if you are going to make a call, there needs to be evidence that it's attributed to a certain bar. Someone may, and I think we all make assumptions that there are several bars or clubs where issues are occurring. Oftentimes it's hearsay, or somebody has seen something or other. And oftentimes it's not necessarily, it might be the people that live on the sides of, the side streets that more so speak to the noise that it is created, or a fight in front of their house, or as you go further down South 18th Street. But again, you can't attribute it necessarily to a bar, because if they're coming down South 18th Street, they could have been at any bar, or they were at no bar.
So
if you're going to attach something to a bar, you need to have evidence that it came from that bar. And if you're listening,
an example of that is video cameras outside of Ember on 18th Street capture people coming out of the bar, mingling around, turning up their radios loud and so forth. And those things do get reported. It's a long story between getting things reported and adding them up to getting the place on a list. And
I think that we may need to talk about this at a different time, possibly with, again, the law enforcement, with the disruptive property person, and so that we can move on with the meeting.
I'll put one last thought in the chat, but thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I just have 2 other things. If you have anything else for me, and then I'll get out of your way so you can continue your meeting. I just want you folks to know, or to think of the things that we've discussed over the past year or whatnot. It's so important that you know what the capabilities of the police department are and what their limitations. If you don't know that, that's where the frustration level rises. And I'm not saying that you can't rely on the police department. We have capabilities and limitations. If we don't have an answer to something, we can certainly find the right answer, but there are some things that we just certainly can't address. The last thing I want to note to you folks, or it's just a suggestion. As a group, as your organization, do you have legal representation?
Mike, you want to answer that?
I'm going to say no, but we do have a few attorneys that are board members. So,
okay, great. Great. Here's something to think about, and it's just a thought. With some of these, in addition to nuisance property, which once that gets up and running, it's going to be very effective. Did you folks ever consider, with a real problem landlord or bar owners or a number of bar owners, have you ever considered and discuss it with your lawyer friends, a class action lawsuit?
I think we would feel, as a all volunteer unfunded group, in the sense that we raise our money through volunteer events and fundraisers, that it probably would be not something that we could sustain against a business that has much greater resources. I see this something that I think, like, the city government would somehow be able to do on our behalf. I don't know who or what department, but that, I just feel that funding would be, we could be easily start the process and then we just run out of money. You know what I mean? They would just,
Can I ask Commander Fisher a question very much on that topic? Is if the community council decided to do a class action lawsuit, would the other bars then all group together protecting this bar against the lawsuit? And it's a moot, and then it just becomes a moot issue because the community council will just be inundated.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I would think that if the other bars weren't party to the lawsuit, they're gonna want to stay as far away from it as they can. That's just my guess. But again, I just throw that out as an idea to you. It doesn't brainstorm, and that was
I
something.
don't think they will band together.
If I could just pop in here real quick, Commander, it's Rep Benham, just to say that class action lawsuit is probably that we've never really seen that be a thing that community groups have had success with bars. What is enshrined in state law is something called a 611 action, which can be done by community members, but it's typically attempted by municipalities because they gather the evidence. The difficulty with the 611 action locally is that those are decided by the courts, and the two judges that most frequently hear those cases almost always side with the businesses. And so it's one of those things that not only would be difficult for the community council to sustain from a funding perspective, because you would be spending a lot of money pulling together this evidence, filing fees in the court, all of those things, only to most likely have the judge decide against. It's also really difficult for the municipality to do that because of these judges. So what I always encourage people is, when we have folks coming around running for Court of Common Pleas, that's a really good question to ask them. Where do they stand on the rights of bars to operate in any manner they so choose in a residential area? So that's kind of the context on lawsuits of nuisance establishments. They are difficult, not so much because there's not a legal path, but because of the way that judges tend to view those lawsuits.
But I will say thank you, Commander, for trying to give us a few more tools in our toolbox, and for the opportunity, I think, to discuss it and hear what others have to say. So I thank you for that.
Okay, if there are no more questions for me, I'll break off.
Okay.
And we'll talk soon.
All right, thank you so
Thank
much.
you, sir.
Good night.
So we're going to move away from public safety to Mike Clark and a stormwater update.
all right. Let me just share my
Hopefully
screen.
everyone will stay with us since we
Yeah.
State Representative Benham and others.
So I'm going to try and do this in like 5 minutes or less. And I hope it's beneficial or helpful to some. So I was part of a class that PWSA was inviting residents to become part of. It was a PWSA Ambassadors Program. It was an opportunity for residents to become more informed about how they're looking at solving their stormwater issue in the city, and just the combined sewer overflow issue and other issues, but also to enlighten the residents as to what the new stormwater fee is about and how it's being spent and how it can be spent in the future. So let's just go through this quickly. My information's right there. Feel free to text me, write me afterwards, however you see fit. So we're just gonna go through these few things. 1 minute a slide or less I'm going for here. All right. So stormwater is the rain or snow that falls on the ground is conveyed to the sewer system. And as you know, in Pittsburgh and the older neighborhoods, they're combined sewers where sewage and storm are combined into one. And on a normal day, it goes down to the lowest point and then is pumped to Elka Sand down the river and is treated. However, with a very little amount of rain, it is overcome and it becomes combined sewer overflow. And it goes directly into the river. We have many individual watersheds, sewer sheds that I was unaware of before I started this course. And we have one particular bad one in our neighborhood, and the city's acknowledged it as one of the worst, is M16 it's called, and I'll show you here shortly. And they're trying to mitigate this one through multiple rainwater projects. And I'll get to that. And they cost money, and that's why we're getting a new fee. So what are sewer sheds and where do you live in one? So M16 here right in the middle, if you can see my cursor, is our troubled sewer shed. It takes a very large swath of our neighborhood and it funnels it down to one point. And when we have a rain event, this is the one that opens up first and stays open the longest and pollutes the river the most. As you can see along here, there's actually, I think there's 14 in the south side. Each time you see it touch the river, that's a pipe that in a rain event, it just opens up and dumps raw sewage right into the river. So if you've been down there, you've probably seen these. Let's see here. Yeah, you've seen these, right? This is one down at around 15th Street. And these just open up and raw sewage just comes right out. This is on the other side on Hazelwood. All right. Whoa. Okay, I'm on the wrong slide now. Should you care? Okay. My slides got mixed up. I apologize. Where'd it go? So there we go. I don't know what happened there. Sorry. So we have a couple of projects that they're putting in to mitigate it on our in M16. And one of them is the 21st Street project, which some of you might know about, where they're taking the street. And I don't have the whole plan here, but essentially they're removing some of the parking along it and regrading the road to open up the street drainage into collection zones that are more stream-like and can retain the water longer, so it doesn't just flush right into the sewer. It holds it for a period of hours to days, and it slowly releases it, allowing the sewer system in El Casan to catch up and be able to handle it. This is one. We also have one in Southside Park that's just sort of starting as part of that master planning, but this is the one in the south side. So the new fees, if you've all probably received this in your, you probably all received this in your PWSA bill recently, but it's based on a tier system. Essentially, if you have impervious material such as a roof or a pavement, a driveway, landscaping that's hard, that's considered impervious, and you're allowed up to a certain amount of it to be considered an ERU, which is a equivalent residential unit. So one unit, so for an average Southside home, if you have somewhere between 1,015 square feet to 2,700 square feet, you're considered to have one ERU, and your cost right now this year will be $5.96 a month. And that's what you're seeing on your bill right now. So that's about $72 a year. Next year it goes up again, and it goes up again and again for the next few years. It's going to become quite expensive. Most residents in our neighborhood, I'm going to say well, most residents are supposed to be tier 2. The average south side is tier 1 and tier 2, depending on how large your lot is. If you're a full lot, you're tier 2. If you're a half lot, 72 by 20, you're tier 1. So, geez, I'm missing a slide. I apologize. So you can find out more about this on their website, but I just wanted to show you guys how you can identify what your fee is and where you are on it. So this is just my block, for instance. I just wanted to say, if you go to this website, which is the PWSA, and they have a fee finder, you can identify your property. And if you click on it, it shows you a little box, and it shows you your impervious amount and your ERU and your classification, and of course your lot and block number. But there are many problems on here. So I encourage you all to check this website out. And just looking on my block here, I have actually 6 mistakes on my block alone. And it's just my half of my block. And why that is because they're using GIS information from Google Earth, and they're misrepresenting. So I'll give you 2 examples here quickly. Number one is my neighbor. He has a side yard and a driveway. and they've only given him an ERU of 0.5. But if you look at it, the image only has a third of his roof on it. This is his actual house, but his lot is defined by an aerial photograph that's missing. So he should actually be 2, but he's only paying 0.5, where the neighbor's paying more than him because of that. So he probably wouldn't complain because he's making out, but it is a problem that works in the opposite as well. Another example, 3, here's another neighbor at the end of my block where this is yard and is counting it as impervious, and he's being charged 2 when he's actually, when you do the math, he's only at 1. So he's paying double what he should just because he's been classified incorrectly. So I encourage you to go to both of these.
It was suggested that you put both of those in the chat.
I will at the end here.
Mhm.
So right here it is. And oh, I have it at the end here. I thought my slides got mixed up. Anyways, I will dump this into the chat. But what I need from you guys is to please do this survey as well. And the survey is meant specifically for the South Side, so we can get more feedback on how the PWSA can spend that money in our neighborhood for projects and concerns that the neighbors are aware of. They don't know how many people have sewer backups. They don't know how many people experience flooding or landslides. They don't know anything about it because nobody gives them feedback. And this is a way they're asking me to help the neighborhood communicate that back to them. So I will drop this in the chat. It's just a form. It takes about 4 minutes to do online. And if you can give as much feedback about your experience with stormwater as you can, that would be great. And it gives our neighborhood more information, or the city more information about our neighborhood to do future projects. So I hope that wasn't rambling and too fast, but I will dump it all in there now.
And I do want to thank, before we get to questions for Mike, I do want to thank him for taking this on. I think I don't know what his title is related to this. I think it's ambassador, stormwater ambassador.
Yeah.
And
just what I need, another title, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it also comes with work.
Yeah.
I think you spend, do you spend 10 hours a month? Taking
Yeah.
classes and interacting. with
Yeah, it
them?
was about 4 months in a row that I did 2 classes a month for 2 hours. And then we're trying to do these type of getting it out to the community. So I'm hoping to do another couple in the community at different events. And again, it's based on the feedback. They were trying to educate me to help educate you guys to get feedback back to them so they know what the issues are in the neighborhood. They otherwise have no idea if like all of 15th Street has flooded basements. No one knows unless you live on 15th. And, of course, people complain, yes, but a better way to get a broad feeling for a neighborhood is to have surveys. So I will drop these in here now into the chat, and it will be all 3 of these links. One's to the survey, and then the other is to their website.
And as Quaylen had suggested, we can also put these links into our newsletter, in our April newsletter. Robert, did you have a question?
Yeah, Mike, I've seen sometimes the pipes coming from the roof gutter, ours go into the ground, and I suspect merge with the general sewer water situation. And some people have been told that they've got to let their pipes spill out on the sidewalk. And in fact, this recent winter, those who had pipes spilling out of the sidewalk had ice. What is your understanding of that? Is there a grandfather way of allowing some people to avoid that for now, or what's the story, Ambassador?
Ambassador, let me tell you. So in generality, the answer is yes, you should always let your rainwater go out onto your yard or an area where it can be absorbed, what have you. In the South Side, we are unique because we don't have yards and we don't have green space. However, putting it out on the sidewalk and letting it go into the gutter is a good way to get it off the property and not go through the sewer system proper into your basement and overloading and scouring and aging your system prematurely with a vast amount of water. However, the sewers on the street at the corners are the same sewers that your sewer in the basement is connected to. So whether you drop it directly in your house or it runs all the way to the corner and drops in, it's going to the same pipe at the end of your block. So until we do more separation of sewers in our neighborhood, it doesn't matter for us.
Good.
So that's unfortunately the answer right now. And there is a reluctance. This is one of my largest complaints during this class, was that the city or the PWSA doesn't seem to have any interest in doing more separation of sewers between storm and sanitary. Their answer is, and we're going to find out more about this in the coming years, is putting in giant holding tanks down closer to the river that holds the storm surge and then slowly releases it over the coming weeks afterwards. And well, that is a valid solution and it hits the short-term goals. The long-term answer is not that. It's separating and doing the hard work that we all know has to happen, right? So it's a little disappointing that they have such shorter-term goals, but it is something they're working on. And these green projects are the amount of water coming out of like the Southside Park and in an area like 21st Street is a large amount of water. When you consider how wide that street is, I think it's 7.5 acres. Imagine getting, you know, 1.5 inches rain on 7.5 acres. If we can hold that on the street and not flush that into the river, that's removing a vast amount of water from the system. So even though they seem small, they do a large amount of work for us. So, but they cost a lot of money. It's about a $5 million project. So any other questions?
Mike?
Yeah. Deb, hello? Somebody?
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. You're
Mike,
welcome.
it's Frank. It's Frank.
Yeah, hi, Frank.
When we had this presentation to the community council last year, I got the impression that if you had a significant amount of permeable acreage, that you could somehow offset your cost. So given the fact that I have my yard, is that correct, or is that a delusion I have?
No, they've changed it a little bit. They've been trying to find carve out exceptions for people who can take care of it. You know, like 9 Mile Run, they want people to turn out their gutters onto their yards and not tied into their sewer system, and they get credits for doing that. We don't have such credits available. And when we looked at the things that are acceptable, and you can go on there to the acceptable credit list and look at it, there's none for the South Side, like urban living folk who have no property. There's nothing we can do. Rain barrels do not count because they don't work in the winter. So it's only like an 8-month solution. So they don't do that.
But the fact that I have that whole yard, that whole lot that's permeable, does that not count then?
It doesn't, because they assume that your gutters are coming off and connected to your house. So you could talk to them and say, no, I have them all turned out into the yard. They're disconnected, and you might be able to get a reduction from your fee.
But mine aren't, so I can't do that.
Right, there you go. You see,
Right.
that's why they don't want to give them out. They're making the residents and the community come to them. So one of the things that we can do in the South Side, and a lot of people don't, can't afford it, I wanted to say, are green roofs. Green roofs are really the only way we can eliminate storm sewer surge load from our properties in 0 lot line residents. They're expensive, they're hard to manage, not the average person's project, but they are acceptable. So,
Okay, thanks.
yep. Any other questions?
I was just thinking as you were talking, we have more, I would say, rental property than home ownership properties. So how would this information get out to property owners so that they can communicate with their tenants in order to learn about what might be happening in their basements if there is a problem?
Yeah, so good question. There's two sides to that, or 2 points to that. Landlords traditionally pay the water and sewer bill because it's a lienable utility. So they've been receiving these notices for the last 6 months that this fee is starting. So they know about it. And I guess what it comes down to is just like what I do for my tenants. I give them an education when they first move in about what my responsibilities are and what theirs are. And I often, they tell me when something's wrong or something's up, and that's the best way it can happen. But I don't think the average tenant is going to know unless the landlord informs them that they're to reach out to them for this type of stuff. So unfortunate, but they will be passing it along, I'm sure, because in 3 years, it's $11 a month per ERU. And that's enormous. You know, I'm as a landlord, I'm just going to pass it through. So that and the rental registration fee,
Mhm.
the rents are going up.
Yeah, and since you brought that up, I'll mention it now. Sarah Kinter was not able to attend our meeting. She's the director of permits, licenses, and inspections that will house the rental registration process. She will be in attendance at the planning forum meeting that we will have in April. It's the second Tuesday of the month at 5:30, and we can certainly share probably the Monday before the meeting, the link to that when she does her presentation. And so that because we have so much rental property here, for those of us on the call and others, it is important for us to have a good understanding of what the rental registration means.
Yeah. So again, follow the chat. There's my first link is the link to the survey. And as many of you, if you can fill it out, I'd appreciate it. And they would, getting feedback to them. The second one is a link to the stormwater fee information. And the third one is the map showing you to confirm your address. And you just zoom in and out, and you'll know quickly by looking at it. You all know your homes, whether they have the driveway or your back porch included or not. And you'll see the numbers. And if they don't make sense, you can text me, I can help you out, but I think it's pretty straightforward. There's a whole how do you contest it section right there. So best of luck.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Any other questions for Mike? Okay, thanks again. We'll move on to Jessica Benham, our state rep for the majority of us. I also want to acknowledge that Suzanne Conroy is on the call from Senator Jay Costa's office. So if there's anything, Suzanne, that you would like to share with us once Jessica finishes, certainly we can entertain that. I also want to acknowledge that Jessica completed her doctorate recently, and knowing firsthand what it takes to complete the degree, I commend her, especially while she was in her first term in the Pennsylvania legislature. I bow down to you. I can't imagine. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. I am really excited to get more sleep. So this is going to be nice because, as you all know, I go to every meeting, I go to every event too. So there have been many nights where I have not slept enough. So that's I'm happy to have it off the list. It's nice to have it done, and some sleep will be much needed. That's going to be great. So announcements from my office. Our senior fair is next week, April 6th from 10 to 1 in the Brentwood Civic Center parking lot. I'm currently in Harrisburg. It is budget season, among other things, and I just wanted to touch on a couple points that are relevant to some of what we talked about tonight and to Southside and folks who live there more broadly. So in the budget that the governor has proposed, there is a proposed increase to the funding for the Pennsylvania State Police, which is what liquor control enforcement is under. So when our magistrate is talking about over serving and things like that, part of what makes it difficult to enforce around that is not having enough LCE agents. And so perhaps, if this goes into effect, we could see a little bit of increase in enforcement there, because we do know that over serving goes down when word is that LCE is on the street. So that is a possibility. There's also a proposed increase to gun violence intervention programs, which I think are very relevant to some of what we're seeing in Southside. I think, the work that our city police are doing is admirable, but there are first responders. It's very difficult, if not impossible, for them to prevent violence. And so having gun violence intervention programs, I think is really important. So I'm excited to see more of that funding. There's also proposed increases to funding for our public schools and for childcare and infrastructure, all of which I think is very relevant to Southside and a lot of, the young families that we now have living in Southside too. I wanted to touch too, we did last year get some state funding for the South 21st Street project that Mike was talking about. We are fighting for additional funding for that in this budget cycle because we were not quite there. It's a much more expensive project than we were able to fund last year. So we got kind of a first phase of funding. And I know both Senator Costa and I would like to see additional state funding going towards that. That's a very important investment. It is also rent rebate season. So if you know folks who want help getting their rent rebates done, we can do them in the office and submit them for people and track them through our office to make sure everything is done correctly. And then the last thing that I wanted to touch on is redistricting. So right now I represent probably about 2/3 of Southside, give or take. I am losing a precinct in redistricting. So after redistricting, I would only represent Southside up to 17th Street.
Oh.
Past 17th Street, it would be the 19th. And that was Jake Wheatley's seat and now special election, et cetera. And I've had conversations with both potential future representatives about the issues that we face specifically in Southside, because a lot of those nuisance establishments that we talk about are what's going to be in the 19th. So hopefully we can have a good partner there. I think the more people fighting in Harrisburg on the issues that impact us, the better. But I did want to touch on that since that's a change to my district that specifically impacts Southside. Of course, as you all know, those of you who have not been my constituents, you still come to me for Southside related things, and that can definitely continue. I'm here for Southside and happy regardless of whether folks are my constituents or not to continue to help folks out. So that's my update. Happy to take any questions that folks have. I was going kind of quickly because I know we're getting late here and I wanted to make sure I got through everything.
Thank you.
Any questions for Jess? Thank you so much for bringing up the redistricting, because it was a question that I had for you. So when you're saying up to South 17th Street, you would be representing, if we just look at East Carson Street, although you're going, down to the river and up to the railroad tracks, you're on the side that has, let's say, Philip Pelusi. You have that 1700 block. You don't have the addresses that are on the other side. Would that be correct?
Yes. So the border is 17th Street. So I would have, if you're looking towards the river, I would have everything on the right side of 17th Street, and everything on the left side of 17th Street would be in the 19th district.
Okay.
Birmingham Bridge, Hot Metal, that going that way.
Yes.
17th. Okay.
All right. Well, Dr. Benham, again, congratulations on the PhD. I know what you mean. And I also want to thank you for the detailed work you do for us on the South Side, and that includes the Battle of the Block Watches, which we're working hard to bring to the 23rd of the month. And thank you for your efforts in that regard, too.
I'm so excited that we're doing it again. It's one of my favorite things. There are, I think, 5 cleanups in my district happening that day because it's Earth Day, but none of them are as fun as the Battle of the Block Watches. We definitely have the corner on creativity on that one.
Okay.
Okay. Suzanne, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to say anything or.
Yeah, I just want to say hello. This is my first time participating with your group. I know Terry usually is involved in meetings, but she couldn't attend. So yeah, I just wanted to say hi. And I know Senator Costa has met with your group on several occasions for issues involving the South Side, and he'll be happy to continue to do so. And also just some of our events. We are having a shredding event on May 7th at Carrick High School from 10 to noon. And our office also does the rent rebates. If, whatever's more convenient, it doesn't matter to us where you go, we're willing to help. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say hi, and you'll probably be seeing me more often. Because Terry, I don't think she's not available too much right now. So, but yeah, I will probably be joining in meetings in the future.
Well, we look forward to having you. So thank you for being in attendance. And I would say that Senator Costa has really worked, has helped us in the South Side very, very much over these last couple of years, and we thank him for that and his continued work that he will be doing.
Yeah.
Suzanne, I'm sorry, Suzanne, where,
Yes.
when is the shredding event?
May 7th, Saturday, May 7th at Carrick High School from 10 to noon.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else for our state reps? Okay, we'll go to city now. I think Bruce had to attend another meeting and was unable to attend ours, but Bob Charlin is here and would like to acknowledge that he is now the Bruce Krause's chief of staff. And there is a new person in the office, Katina Mata, and she's the legislative aide. And Bob may want to speak more to that. He has been the face of Bruce's office in the community, and I believe will be continuing that role, but he can certainly share what he knows so far, and I'm sure it's a work in progress.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Brasha from our office finally moved on. She had been looking for a little bit, and we're really thankful that for the job that she did and for where she landed. But I will be taking over as the councilman's chief of staff, but I will still be here and still very much involved on the community side. That was not part of my responsibility that I was okay with getting rid of. So you're still stuck with me. Katina's new in our office. She will be answering the phones, at least for the short period of time here, but feel free to call me if there's anything that I can help with. We're kind of working through, trying to get her up to speed on how the city works that way. But the couple points that I did want to bring up today, the councilman fast-tracked legislation that is going to move $4 million towards the signal upgrades on 18th Street. I know we've been talking about that project for a while, but it is set to start this spring with the signal upgrades all the way up from starting at Mary Street all the way up through Amanda along 18th Street. We also are getting closer and closer by the day to Carson Street, the work on Carson Street finishing up here. If you've noticed, they've installed new poles, new wiring, and new lights along Carson Street. And they're getting closer and closer to the point where we're able to resurface the street, which I'm really looking forward to. Another point I wanted to bring up, rental registry, as Mike mentioned earlier, and we are going to have Director Kenter at Planning Forum. Rental registry does go into effect on May 29th. I don't want anyone to be caught off guard by that. You have between May 29th and the end of the year to sign up for rental registry if you own rental properties. The fee is broken down, but it is $35 a unit for the year. So it's much cheaper than we originally anticipated. And any questions with that, we have a website for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. The last thing I wanted to mention, our office is exploring, and as we explored before, quality of life ticketing, which is the concept very similar to a traffic ticket or a parking ticket, where you would get a ticket at the site of an infraction and then have to argue it in front of traffic court. We're looking at really trying the same process for weeds and trash. So we would ticket you at the spot, and if you wanted to argue that case, you'd have to argue it in front of the magistrate. But we would err on the side of as a violation. Robert and Liz, any questions there?
Unmute.
You were unmuted.
I think Robert is just, he's just deliriously happy with that thought, and I'm sure will support you in any way he can to make sure that happens, especially about the trash.
Okay. Sorry, I thought you were chiming in there.
Bob, it's Frank Vitale. I have a duplex. Do I need to register for that rental thing?
Yes, you will.
Okay.
Yeah, not you, but your tenant, yes.
So I thought it was a fee the landlord had to pay.
You are the landlord. You have one unit basically, Frank.
Yeah.
You're living in the other.
Right, so I'm the landlord for that unit, so do I have to register that?
You do.
You do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how
And
do
your fee is $65, Frank.
Because of
But I can help you for $165.
Yeah, 25 of that's payable in cash to Barbara, but
Bob, where do we go to register then?
yeah, let me get you the website here.
Okay.
And again, on Sarah Kincher will be sharing all the details at the planning forum meeting in April.
Yeah. The website's through One Stop PGH. If you're not familiar with that, I can help you with that, Frank. And
Okay, thank you.
I will plug that in the link here.
And we did, I think you've mentioned it, but I don't know if you need to go into any more detail, you or Mike Clark. Mike has spent a lot of time talking with PennDOT regarding the work that's being done on East Carson Street. But a question was, will East Carson Street be properly paved following the construction and patchwork done on it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm very much waiting for the day that it is paved. But yeah, it will be properly paved, and they'll pave it before they mark it, obviously.
And that comes back to three things that we still wanted to talk to you and Jay Costa's office and whoever else at Domi. We talked about getting together before the street was painted to discuss what pattern would be at 18th and Carson. Since they didn't want to do an all-stop pedestrian cross, they were talking at a meeting about doing like the whole intersection painted. We didn't want it to look like a Route 51 intersection. We were thinking something a little more in the character of our neighborhood. No one's reached out to us from PennDOT or Domi to ask us what that might be. We would like
Mike,
to have.
are you referring to like a kind of a mural painting there? Is that what like they've done in on Brownsville Road and
Yeah, other places downtown, there's a lot of it. So that's what we were thinking. Something, again, the idea was to highlight the intersection so it'd slow people down so they had a little more awareness of the pedestrian nature of that intersection over all the others.
Yeah, our traffic calming department loves doing that. So although it is a state project, I'm happy to explore that. That's not something I've heard of before, but I love that idea, and I think it would be really cool if we could pull that off.
Yeah, that was the compromise in the interim, instead of doing an all-stop pedestrian cross all ways solution at that corner, because they didn't like that. They thought that was traffic deterrent too much. And we said, well, what else? And this was the offer they threw at us. So, and then the other one is we're still talking about these medians in front of 19th Street and down at 22nd. We discussed, as we all know, who's been in these meetings, we talked about them being planted and they were paved over with concrete. So we're up for other options and ideas, if it's planters or something, but greening up and highlighting them with some elevation would be appropriate, I think, for our district, and not just some PennDOT Route 51 solution signage that I know is coming if we let them do it. So we're all after something. The business is right there. They're also supposed to be shortened at 19th. They were built full length. So we now have an extra like 100 feet of concrete that we weren't supposed to have. So I think something needs to be done there. And I look forward to talking with you all to figure that out with Domi and what we can do with PennDOT. So please.
Yeah, I'm happy to look into that, Mike.
Remember correctly, we had some conversations with PennDOT where they signaled some openness to doing the work. I think the question was more, they needed approval from the city and an agreement on maintenance moving forward for green spaces.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we stalled, because we just were not at that stage yet. So now might be the appropriate time to talk about what we want there, who's going to maintain it, and get that kind of cooperation agreement put in place. If I remember right, the cooperation agreement would need to be between the city and who is ever maintaining. So if it's going to be volunteers from the community council, I'll look at the email chain just to remind myself, but I'm pretty sure it has to be there. and then PennDOT was okay with putting something in.
Yeah, two things there of the value of it has been lost because we weren't gonna, they've already spent the money on the concrete. So now who's gonna pay for the planters versus jackhammering the concrete, putting in the soil like we talked about. So somebody's got to pay more money or someone's got to find money for planters that are, the right response there. I don't know what that is. So that's one thing. The second is the maintenance agreement. You're right. We talked about that. However, we did mention that we felt the parking enhancement district is the better manager of that since they have funding for beautification along Carson Street. So they would be the most appropriate party, I think, to hold a maintenance contract. They can pay for the flowers, they can arrange community effort with us to do the weeding and stuff like that. But I think that would be the more appropriate party to be hold of the maintenance agreement.
Perfect. Yeah, if we can get confirmation from the city that that's something they're willing to commit to, we can certainly approach PennDOT with that, because I think that was the holdup. And we can go from there. But I think there's some challenges, probably city and state cooperation wise. So we'll see what we can work out. And I think Bob maybe chat offline.
So Rosemary Berman has a question.
Thank you, Barbara. Talking about the medians, I'm wondering whether there will be any kind of evaluation of some of the traffic patterns in that you've got medians by 23rd Street, for example, and you can't make a right on Red, which backs up by the Birmingham Bridge. Will that be revisited and reevaluated and maybe some of that signage changed?
No, I I was part of all those meetings. The public was invited to all of them, and I know where there was no right answer there, and this was a chosen approach for that intersection. In hindsight, now that I've seen it in operation, I think it is doing some good, but it's not the best solution. We should have turned those streets so they only are one way away from Carson, so you only turn off Carson instead of coming to Carson, and then you have to choose which way you're going. Or towards, I don't know, one or the other, but there was no right answer. The only problem we were trying to mitigate there, or they were trying to mitigate, was coming off Birmingham Bridge and not being stopped waiting for someone to turn left on 22nd. They wanted the traffic to move all the way towards 21st. That's why the Port Authority bus stop is moved from the front of the library to the next intersection. It's a mega bus stop, larger, accommodate the full bus or two. And that was part of that idea as well, to keep traffic flowing off the bridge.
But if you have only one direction, you can either go straight or make a right. There's no left turn allowed there. So why wouldn't there be a right on Red?
Because again, we brought one of our main points when we started conversations about our Carson Street renovation project was that no turn on Red was labeled different at every intersection. Some of them said from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. Some said from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. and some had none. One side of the intersection was different than the other. We suggested that the problem of turning on Red in regards to a pedestrian accident issue was not during the day. It's from about 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. and we suggested that it become a nighttime timing on the sign. PennDOT didn't agree. They said no turn on Red, all lights along Carson from 10th to 25th, I believe, was their solution. So it was out of our hands. It was what they decided. It's their road. We didn't agree with that. That's not what we asked for, but that's what they gave us. So.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry. We tried our best.
I think it goes beyond 25th, because if you're coming down Sarah and then you make that left turn to go onto Carson, it's by the Citizens Bank. There's no turn on Red there either.
Right, but the new signage in this project stops really at Zofco's. Right,
okay.
Is the end of it. Kind of, you know what I mean, with the new signage and new intersections.
Right.
Those probably already exist, and I don't know what they are, to be honest. So, but yeah. Okay.
Are there any more questions for Bob?
Sorry, Bob, took all day.
No, Mike, feel free.
Or Mike, when it comes to East Carson Street, he's going to have that tattooed on his.
Dealing with it for like, what, 5 years have we been talking about this? 4 years, 5? So,
yeah.
No.
I have a question for Bob. Are we going to have any more paving of any of the side streets? Because I know there's one street on Jane that's really bad, and there's other areas too.
100%. I think, which block edge on Jane?
It's right before Mike's. What block?
21st to 22nd, please.
That was actually one of the unfortunately the paving list, our recommendations have already gone in, but that was one of the ones that I definitely put in there that I've been noticing. Quite treacherous.
Actually, do you know when the list will come out for the pavings?
Actually, Chief Frank is on. I wonder if she might be able to say that.
Yeah, they in the chat, Chief Frank did introduce herself, so this may be our opportunity to speak to us. She is Lisa Frank. She's the Chief Operating and Administrative Officer for the city.
Hello, everyone. Nice to join you. This is, I think, my first time listening in. The paving list is just being finalized, and I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you street by street. And I will just say one thing in general is that it's been it's always difficult to make the paving list. This year with oil prices, it's gonna be tougher than ever. So I just want to sort of remind people that we are in the middle of we're not in the middle of, but feeling the effects of a war that's sort of not of our making, and that the initial paving list that we made, we have to scale back a little bit because everything is so much more expensive because of the cost of oil. But I think the final list will be published as soon as we can kind of get it to fit in the revised budget, and people should be getting those answers pretty soon.
And Chief Frank, do you remember how many miles per council district we get to pave here? I'm drawing the blank off the top of my head, the number.
I am, and obviously that's one of the things that's changing. I mean, it's a little late, the paving list this year, for just that reason, because we made it. We looked at all of your council recommendations. We looked at the state of the streets, kind of from the asset management lens, and match them as we do against where are the pothole requests, because sometimes it's easier to just pave the whole thing than deal with the potholes. And just about as it was finished, the trigger in our contract about what happens when oil prices rise kicked in, and we had to go back and do it again. So the number's gonna be a little smaller than it was when we started, but I also don't know off the top of my head.
When do we as residents make recommendations to our council office for the following year? So I would think that we should be providing Bob with information for 2023. What's the time period?
I submit that usually, it's usually in January when that goes in.
Okay.
So, but I take that on a rolling basis. Actually, it's the second tab of my constituent calls is what roads we're getting complaints about. So please let me know. I'll put that in as early as I can.
Okay. 311s as well, correct, Bob? You're using that information, or?
Domi does collect that. I personally collect who's brought it up to me, but Domi does aggregate there's a paving request tab in Q Alert, and Domi does look at that. There's a whole scaling process, and they they look at it like it's a math problem almost, but my requests do go in and they get weighted in a certain way too.
Okay.
I just say, there's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 different lenses that get applied, assuming we know how many miles we can do in any given year. Definitely, making a call makes a difference. It's a good idea to know where people are concerned. And then there are some, I don't know exactly, just asset management iterations. So if a road, if you pave it, can stay paved for about 10 years, where are we in the cycle of years? Where does it make sense to we're just generally behind a little bit, but what, how are we thinking about managing the roadways as a whole so that we're kind of caring for the asset and not falling too far behind in any given place. So it's a combination of kind of who's contacting their council person or the administration about it. And then, we may obviously maintain kind of data about the whole, roadways across the city and where are we in their kind of life cycle of paving.
Can I ask a technical question that is kind of come up in years past when we were talking with Guy Costa years ago? He used to tell us they don't pave partially paved streets. And this came up when we did in the south side, like in the last 10 years, we did gas line replacement.
Yeah.
So we have a fair amount of streets that are 3/4 repaved as part of that effort. And like I have a great example, Jane Street at 23rd. There's a 100-foot section that is just falling apart, but I'm not going to ask for my whole street to be repaved. And he would have said, no, you have to have the whole street repaved. They don't do partial. Is that not the case? Do you guys do that? Or how do I identify that? Because I've been calling for potholes for 3 years and it's the same really bad area and the rest of the road's fine.
It is a really good idea not to get into the half road situation because it's hard. It's hard to pave a half road. Yeah. And so one of the things that we're working on is really not to get into that situation, to try to coordinate in advance and tightly with PWSA and the other utilities so that situation doesn't arrive, and also so that we can be more efficient. If we know they're going in somewhere to do something, then can we arrange with them to take care of the whole thing, do a little bit of give and take here. So we're really working on that, right now to just make sure that what we're doing, the utilities know about, what the utilities are doing are what we know about, and then we can make smarter decisions and make our resources go farther.
I appreciate it.
We have a question from Mike McCain.
Yeah, I know we've kind of gotten off the subject of Carson Street and the upgrade. The first thing I notice is that we have one heck of a lot more poles, telephone poles, metal poles, wooden poles, tall poles, short poles. There's more poles than I've ever seen in my life. And I'm wondering if some of the wooden ones, are they like temporary or are they permanent? And here's a great example on 18th and Carson. There are many poles, but for some reason, on 3 corners, there are large poles that have the walk, no walk signs on them. But on the corner where the bank is, they put a whole separate pole in there just to carry one walk, don't walk sign. And I mean, I don't understand the logic behind any of it, but I was just curious if there was an answer to the forest that we now have on Carson Street.
Mike, I would have to look at your specific example, but I do know that there were temporary poles that were put in. And there were some that looked very crazy when they were put in temporarily, that some just had one sign on them or something like that. I'd have to look at the specific one you're talking about, but the end result of the project is to have less poles. But where we are temporarily, they have to make sure that signage is up the whole time throughout. I would have to see exactly the one that you're talking about. But I do know that I noticed that myself, that there was one that was like a big pole, and I think it had a street names on it, and that was it. And it was like, this is way overkill. But the end result is that there should be less poles.
Well, they have done a fine job on the finished concrete sidewalks on these wooden poles to finish around the poles. That it looks like it's permanent, but I hope you're right and the wooden ones are gone. But take a walk on 18th Street, go by the bank, and you'll see the extra pole there.
By the bank, I'll check that out. I'll see which one you're referring to.
Okay, thanks.
And I can tell you from
18th and
my,
East Carson Park, 18th and East Carson parking lot, there's about 5, 6, and every pole that Mike commented about is on that corner.
and I can tell you from all the meetings we sat through that reducing, eliminating overhead wires and utility posts along Carson was a frequent topic, and they tried to eliminate it where they could. I forget if there was a terminology for it, but they couldn't do it in a lot of places, and that's why you're still going to maintain some wooden utility poles in the final design, unfortunately. And I don't know, like in other places I've worked, they would have a mandate that if a building on Carson that serves electricity off the Carson Street side had an upgrade, they'd be forced to move their service to the rear. I don't feel like the city has that rear side service mandate in the code from what I've worked with, which is something that we could be working on in the future, maybe as a community and as a city. But that's the only way you're going to get to that is by mandating as the upgrade electrical service, it moves to the rear of the property and is back served. Because there's wires down both sides that are serving, I'm going to say 80% of the businesses are back served along Carson. It's just that 20 that's driving these wires across the front. So,
yeah, I was just talking to someone, a resident who just moved here, and they were commenting on just how great it was that we've buried most of our wires compared to a lot of other neighborhoods. Just obviously, you know, the difference between 90 and 100% is dramatic, but it is, you know, something to acknowledge.
call it the Pittsburgh spider web.
Wow.
Anything else for zone 3? Not zone 3, district 3. I'm back at the beginning of the meeting.
And Mike.
And Chief Frank, thank you for spending your evening with us and getting to know those of us on the south side.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And I'm going to share my screen for a bit. And head down to, so over the last few years, we have worked with several people in the mayor's office around community affairs, and our Liz Style was one of those community affairs people, not in Southside, but in other parts of the city. So with the new mayor, we have a new team, and I was able to speak with Rebecca Rinaldo, and she and Melvin Hubbard L had met with us at a board meeting that Southside Community Council had. So at this point, they are referred to as the Neighborhood and Constituent Services, and there are a three-member team, and you can see Melvin Hubbard L. He is from the East End and will be the community advisor to the mayor. You can see what his work will be about. We have Rebecca Rinaldo, who is the neighborhood service manager. She has had a number of different positions, not in the city necessarily, but in nonprofits. And she did work with Oakland Planning Development Corporation. So she's familiar with Oakland and with just the work, I think, similar work to what we're doing here on the South Side. So she's knowledgeable about that. And then we have Chrisara Johnson, who is the community liaison, who will be working with Rebecca. And she is with us today, and she certainly can introduce herself and speak to her plans. She can also tell you how long they've been working together, and it may only be a couple of weeks or so. And it's important to note that there are 3 of them. We have 90 neighborhoods. The expectation is they have an understanding of all 90 at some point. And probably in 2023, they'll expand their team, but currently they are 3. My understanding is that Chrisara is from the South Pittsburgh area, so there are some things that we won't have to educate her about, but it also provides her with an opportunity to educate us as we move beyond our boundaries. So I would like to have Chrisara speak to introduce herself and if there's anything that she has to share. And I hope that I have pronounced your name correctly.
You did. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Like Barbara said, my name is Chrisara Johnson. I am from the South Side. I'm from Belsuver. I'm happy to be here. I am the community liaison for the mayor's office. I will be more particularly involved in South Side like meetings, community meetings. And what I'm doing here is I'm listening to all of the concerns that everyone has, all the constituent concerns, and I'm bringing them back to the mayor's office to see what resources we have and what can we bring to help the community and figure out how we can best work with the community and serve the community as we can.
And how long has your team been together?
We have been together. I actually, like last week, I told you we had like 14 days together. So this week, I'll say we're probably on like day 18 or 19 where we've been together. And also within our neighborhood services, within our neighborhood and constituent services team, we have another team member. Her name is Jessica Farrell. If you call the mayor's office, more than likely she'll be the one that you speak to. But she is our neighborhood services coordinator, and I did want to mention that.
Thank you.
But yeah, but for the most part, it's just us.
I spent a period of time yesterday sharing with Rebecca all the different meetings we have on South Side, and it took a while to explain all of those. So she did share that her team could not attend all of them. And we did say that it's probably best to attend the planning forum meeting because you're also in attendance there would be the Southside Community Council and the Southside Slopes Neighborhood Association. But we also have your email address and can be in touch with you whenever necessary.
Yes, and I also posted it in the chat as well.
Okay. Any questions, keeping in mind that she's been less in her position for less than a month?
Nice to meet you. Welcome aboard.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
We're a nice group. So with that, and we're heading towards the end of the meeting here. Just some Southside Community Council updates. And I, as I was thinking about this the other day, thinking what's the best way to become familiar with our work, best way to engage with public officials and community organizations, and the best way to be involved. And to really know about the work that we do, your best bet is to go to our website. And it's a new website. I think we may have, it's less than a year that the board members were working on it. But as a registered community organization, we are required to put our minutes, our agenda and our minutes on our website. So they are there. And as I've told a number of people, as we were trying, I was struggling with a number of years ago on what to put on the agenda each month, and to also have board members understand what each other is doing, because we have a board right now of 15 people, and everyone works. Everyone does a lot of things, but we may not know what each other is doing. So the agenda became, I would say, a living document in that everything is placed on that agenda. If I remember, I will send the agenda out to the board members who fill it in with the work that they've done over the last month. So we can read it. If necessary, at the meeting, we can ask questions and talk about it. And then we move on to our old business and our new business. We still meet. Our meetings are over 2 hours long, but I think they're very robust. So we do have a committee, fundraising and community engagement. So there will always be information with these in these areas. And sometimes I would say if it's not October, November, you're not going to see anything about a pie sale. But what would be coming up is the flower sale. But again, there's information about in those areas. We, as a result of becoming a registered community organization, we've done a lot with engaging with the development in our neighborhood. And we've met since 2020, we've met most months in reviewing projects. Most of them are around on East Carson Street. So we're becoming much more familiar with the historic district guidelines, which for a long time were something that I would say only the local review committee knew about, but many of us didn't. And we're becoming more proficient in what those guidelines are. We've always done work with developers and attending zoning board meetings. We continue to do that. And we do look at liquor licenses. Working with nighttime economy manager, we will learn about what new liquor licenses are coming about, what might be placed in storage, and we're engaging as much as we can with those applications. And then we do a lot, and this may be what we are maybe best known for, our beautification efforts, revitalization, stabilization, and maintenance. That's a mouthful, but this is all the work that we do. You can see street trees, green in that, which encompasses all of the little green parts, the parking lots and parklets. Southside Park, Riverfront Trail, as Mike had talked about, a lot of work will be occurring this summer in Esther's Plaza. And Robert spoke about the block watches. South Watch, we do a lot related to around graffiti, or not graffiti, trash and problem properties. So, and again, every month you can look where I think, I can't recall if it's right now, I think you can see what November 2020, we should be getting up our January and February minutes in the next few weeks. But engaging with public officials and community organizations, there are times, those of you that are on Facebook, you may see at times posts that go up about East Carson Street, about some other things. And then further down with the comments, you might hear, Bruce Krause, where are you? Why aren't you responding? And one of the reasons would be that he doesn't engage on Facebook. And for the most part, none of us do, because it just doesn't, unless you're putting something factual on there, if you say something, unless you're on Community Watch, somebody could end up swearing at you, and the post doesn't become, it just veers off. So we have the Southside Planning Forum, as I mentioned, the chamber is in attendance, the Slopes Association, Community Council. Bruce Krause is always in attendance with Allison Harden, the Nighttime Economy Manager, so you can hear updates about PED and ask questions. South Watch, we have, it's the second Wednesday of each month, either at noon or 6 p.m. We have the Environmental Services Superintendent. We have City Council, state representatives, Tim Lewis from Duquesne University. So when you have questions or concerns, this is a good place to come. And we have through the mayor's office, we're able to get some signs replaced, just a lot of work that might not have been able to get done if you weren't face to face with someone who could make a difference. So, we're narrow to a degree in what it is that we do, but we really do try to get results. And then, of course, we have the Zone 3 public safety meetings. They're the fourth Thursday of each month. Liz Stile is the president of the Zone 3 public safety. And in addition to those of us here on South Side who may attend, it's also the other neighborhoods that are in Zone 3. Commander Fisher is there. There are a lot of their presentations, and it's an opportunity just to go beyond the boundaries of South Side and to hear what's happening in the other neighborhoods. And so then the best way to be involved is volunteer, attend events, learn about board membership. We have 15 board members. We can have more. We don't want people on the board just to have people on the board, but if you have some skills that you think we would benefit by, it's worth talking with us. We are looking for someone with social media expertise, and we worked this past year with Duquesne University students that were getting their MBAs, and we were their capstone project. And something that I think stood out for me was that when you look at the demographics of South Side, much of it is, say, the 20 to maybe 35-year-olds. And the question is, are we as an organization looking at meeting some of their needs? There's a tendency for us to think about empty nesters, and we're not the largest bunch. And so what we need to do is figure out how do we get to that demographic, and social media is certainly one place to do that. We're also looking for someone with financial background. We have a treasurer, and it's always good to have someone working with that treasurer so that in case that person, their term is up or something else happens, we have somebody that can step right in. We have been applying for grants and working, attempting to do more as we see what needs to be done on the South Side. And it's important for us to have a good financial. Our finances need to be in order, and we don't have much. We don't have, but they need to be in order. And if somebody wants to grant us money, they need to know that we're good stewards of that money. And then we also try to have a university student who's interested in community engagement. Over the last couple of years, a Duquesne student has sat on our board, and it's been really beneficial to us. So the person that we have now will be graduating. So we're looking for someone new. And so thanks for being a part of the Southside community. You can always reach us at info@southsidecommunitycouncil.org. And thank you for attending this meeting, and hope that you found it useful. And if anyone has any questions for us as a council, please share them. Otherwise, we might be done for the evening.
I have one quick question.
Yep.
I am a huge fan of the color park. I don't know if everyone is, but not some of the vulgarity that's there. Do you know if it's okay to spray over it? Like, is it fair game? Like you just, you can spray whatever there?
Yes, I can speak to this. So I've been working with Kelsey Ripper, who's I think she is the director of the Friends of the Riverfront, and that falls under her purview for maintenance. And we have talked about how we can somehow do some rebranding down there. It's not what it was intended. And of course, it never does, right? You never know how these things are going to go. The graffiti and the public art was supposed to stay in the park, and it has slowly creeped around and out of there to the entire parking lot and down the trail. And it's just become graffiti tag paradise, which is not what we all intended when we first started. So she was trying to figure something out in the near future, post pandemic, to readdress it all. And but yeah, anytime you see any vulgarity or whatever, feel free. You're no different than anybody else. Feel free. Oh, you're muted, so we can't hear you. You're muted.
Annette, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Just one quick follow-up. As you get out of the park and closer to the 10th Street Bridge, is it okay to spray in black over profanity on the asphalt, or is that actually preferred a 311 call?
I'd say, if I don't see you do it, I'm happy you did it. Let's just say that. I ride my bike with my daughter.
Is it also an appropriate 311 call?
I don't know who would take care of it. That's the problem.
Okay.
We used to have a Graffiti's Busters group that is, I believe it's been disbanded for years now, at least post-pandemic, pre-pandemic. So there is nobody, I believe, that's taking care of that type of nuisance.
But
Right?
the one thing that I will say, if you do what Mike is suggesting, it's always good to put it into 311, because we have learned over the last couple of years, probably because of Allison Harnden, who's the nighttime economy manager, who says that every Monday she's looking at all the 311 calls that come in that may come to public safety, and others do that too. So if nothing goes into 311 related to graffiti anywhere, then the city, with a limited number of resources, may say, we might see graffiti, but nobody's complaining about it. We're going to put our money elsewhere. And resources will go to what is seen, what appears to be needed. So you can do both, but it is important to always follow up with the 311.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I felt like the bridge got a really big cleanup since we lived here. Like someone had, but again, for the record, I adore the color park. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, we'll be down there on the 23rd. Please join us, April 23rd.
Yeah.
We're picking up all the trash.
I know. I also love picking up trash, but I'm out of town that weekend, so I'm kind of bummed. But sign me up for any other trash pickups.
And I think Friends of the Riverfront, I know that Doug Ripper and a few others are stewards of the Riverfront Trail, Color Park, and all. So they always, I know that they do go out in the mornings. I'm not sure what mornings, but
that's a website or a Facebook page.
I don't think it's Friends of the Riverfront.
Yes.
It's an organization.
I mean, in terms of how I would reach them.
I'll send you Doug's.
There's Doug. Perfect timing, Doug.
Okay, Doug is there.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. Yeah, Doug Ripper and Jan and I are stewards for the South Side Trail. And Mike, everything you said about the color park is right on. friendsoftheriverfront.org is the website, and you can check their events, and they've worked, of course, with Mike too on some of the cleanups and whatnot. Yeah, anything you want to paint over in the river in the color park is fine, and also on the trails, because it's open season on that anyway. So, but yeah, we regularly go out, not with any kind of a schedule, mostly as weather permits, and pick up trash and do what we can with some other things, other issues on the side. Yep.
Is there a similar group for walking up the hill to 350 Bakery?
Not that I'm aware of. Friends of the Riverfront is, their mission is the Three Rivers Heritage Trail. So the
Yeah,
30
yeah. I'll
30
look that one
mile
up. But
trail.
Barb, also, I like walking up the hill to the bakery, and that has a lot of trash too, if you hear of anything
So
on that path.
Friends of the Southside Park, Kitty might be on here with Jeff. They might have cleanups. I don't know if you're walking through the park to get up there or up 18th Street, but if it's up through the park, I know they do cleanups and weed outs and stuff up there as well. So Friends of the Southside Park.
Okay, thank you.
Out to them.
And I know that Beth Carroll, who lives on South, I know that South 18th Street is a challenge. We do have, we're working with a few, with environmental services on a few properties that consistently have been problematic. Closer to Josephine, the entrance where Josephine begins. But I believe that Beth Carroll, who lives on South 18th Street, further up across from the entrance to Quarry Field and in the park, I think she does a lot of cleanups also. So we, I think Kathleen Petrillo has her information that she can share with you.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
if you didn't see it, the trail system was in the news this week. River Life proposed a completing the loop, which included a proposal of like $240 million to do a lot of projects. We had about 20 something million in the South Side projects that were identified in that plan that you should check out. You can find it online on the riverlifepittsburgh.org. And you can see the improvements they're planning from Hot Metal down to 4th Street, which is the kind of the big areas. So, but the big one is lighting, is public safety and beautification, space creation and access. You know, that's kind of the big things. So,
Thanks.
yep.
I was just putting something in the chat. Chief Frank had asked about whether volunteer cleanup crews, she said volunteer cleanup crews were suspended during COVID. Should we look at reviving those up again? And I said yes. So. Anyone have-
Definitely. And I think with a little bit of training about the best way to offer services to people we might encounter who are unsheltered would also be really good to, like, you know, while you're out picking up trash, to have a little bit of training in the best way to connect services.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions, comments? It's 8:57. And Annette, Kathleen wrote, Beth Carroll does not use email on a frequent basis. If you contact info@Southside Community Council, she'll pass the information to her. Okay. If nothing else, our next general meeting would be at the end of September. So thanks to all of you who are in attendance. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks, Barb. Good meeting. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Hey, Barb.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.